Give me big old buckets of butter beer. Give me big old barrels of butter beer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round from my friend right here of the sweet old butter beer.
Welcome to the Three Broomsticks. We invite you to pull up a chair, grab a butterbeer, and settle in for a hearty discussion about Harry Potter. I'm Sierra Overmark.
I'm Irvin Cateman.
I'm Sam Williams, and tonight we have an extremely special guest that we are very honored to have with us tonight. The head writer of Hogwarts Legacy, Adrian Ropp. Welcome, Adrian.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Adrian, we do this with our guests every time. We'd love to know what your Hogwarts house is, if you have a favorite book, a favorite character, and then what your journey to Potter was, / also, what was your journey to becoming a head writer on Hogwarts Legacy?
Yeah, so I wasn't actually a head writer. I was a lead writer, but I was the head of the story department. So it's a little bit of difference, but I don't want to take away any credit from my friends that did amazing work on that project. Anyway, okay, so what house am I in? I'm in the best house, Hufflepuff.
Yes! Hi!
Nice!
Yay!
It's 3 Hufflepuffs versus 1 Gryffindor on this podcast.
Nice. So the person that's in Gryffindor, you obviously cheated on the test. So you could get
I've gotten it every single time. 75. My first one was Ravenclaw. My second one was Ravenclaw. And then the next 72 were all Gryffindor.
They have a tracker on there. If you take it multiple times, they know you're cheating, so they put you in Gryffindor.
That's really funny.
You know, Harry would have I don't want to be Slytherin. I don't want to be Hufflepuff. So he just kept taking the
all Gryffindors are just cheaters. Excellent.
Yeah. My favorite book is Watership Down. And
nice.
I love it, and I own far too many copies of it. It's a problem. My favorite character, I assume you're meaning in the Wizarding World franchise?
Yes.
My favorite character? Hermione.
Oh, interesting. That's great.
Excellent.
I think she's amazing. She's determined. She never gives up on her morals, and she thinks through problems, and she's a big problem solver. So she's kind of I think in a lot of ways, the backbone of their group of friends. I think she's pretty cool. I relate to Neville a lot because I think we both had the same experience in high school, but Hermione's my favorite character for sure.
Do you subscribe to the same theory that Irvin and I do, that Hermione would make an excellent evil villain in the Wizarding World?
Okay, so one thing that separates heroes from villains, I think, especially in the Wizarding World franchise, is one decision. If you have a really bad day and everything goes against you and you just feel like everything's just wrong, you're going to make a really important decision on that day. And so if Hermione had made a decision the other direction, I don't know, when she was tortured by Bellatrix Lestrange, that would have been her opportunity to go you know what? I'm going to learn the unforgivable curses. That's fine with me. This person needs to get revenge. Neville, same character. He could have made different choices with his life. And Harry struggled with that actually through the whole book series. So I think very little actually separates heroes from villains except nuances of gray. And I think Sebastian Sallow is actually a really good example.
That's excellent. Yeah. Also, if I may, shameless plug, Lori Kim and I are doing a joint presentation about Hermione's evil side at Conjuration this November. So, listeners, if you are in Atlanta and you want to hear me and Lori Kim expound on one of the few areas we kind of agree, come to Conjuration and it's going to be fun.
What's really interesting, that sounds really fun. But what's really interesting is even villains think they're the hero of their story. They don't
absolutely
consider them villains. They feel completely justified in what they're doing, and that's why a lot of more modern storytelling really rounds out the villain's backstory, so it's not just a mustache twirling sort of villain like in the old Disney cartoons. Cruella de Vil wanted to kill puppies and make a fur coat. That was pretty one-dimensional. It was scary, but nowadays we get a lot more nuance of that. So that's a really interesting topic. I like it. Where are you going to be doing that at?
So it's a fantasy-based convention in Atlanta they have every November called Conjuration. Get it?
Oh, I see.
Like a con? Yeah. And I go every year. It's always a blast.
And you said you'd send me $20 on PayPal if I helped you promote that plug. So
Oh, for sure,
I'm
yeah.
just watching for the alert on my phone now.
Yeah, listeners, this is why we need you to contribute to our Patreon so we can bribe our guests for shameless plugs. It's a whole virtuous cycle here.
I get it. Totally get it.
What was your journey to Harry Potter? How did you find it?
So, I'm a little older than you are, and I was a full-fledged adult when the first book came out. And I was staying at my parents-in-law's house over Christmas break one year, and my wife gave me the first volume because we'd heard, great things about it, and I ended up being really sick and kind of bedridden that weekend, and I devoured that first book in, a few hours, and I asked my wife, can you go get me the second book, please? Because I think 3 books were out at that point. And by the end of that week, I'd read the first 3 books. And I thought, this is just wonderful and magical. I love these characters. I love the imagination of the world. And I really dug that they were growing as people over time. And so as the characters matured, so did the books. And I just found that so charming. I just loved it. Mm-hmm. So it was... whatever year Prisoner of Azkaban came out in the U.S., that was the year that I started reading them, and I devoured them. The problem with that is you devoured those books that quickly, and then you got to wait 2 years for the next volume.
3 years, 4 years,
right.
2 years.
Yeah. But after that point, for the last 4 books, I was at the midnight parties and everything. I was full in.
Yeah.
Lucky.
That's the definite pro side to having been an adult.
Yep.
At that
Yeah,
time,
during
you
this time,
can make your own
absolutely.
decisions about going to midnight releases.
Yeah.
And not be turned down by your parents.
Yeah, I finally got Deathly Hallows. I had to move heaven and earth, but I was like, I will go to a midnight lunch for the last book.
I mean, I feel like I was a drug pusher at that point because I got everybody in my circle of family and friends to start reading the book. My wife and I, when Deathly Hallows came out, finally, after the torturous wait for that book, we were arguing over who got to read the book first. And so we ended up buying 2 hard copies and the audio CD so that I could also listen to it on my drive to work.
Nice. That sounds like in my family.
Yeah.
How the books just kind of grew over time. There was 1 book for the family, 1 book for the family here. Okay, maybe 2 copies for Goblet. Now there's 3 copies for everyone that wants to read Order. Now there's 7 copies.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
It had to be done
Pretty
to
much.
save our marriage.
Oh man. So how did you end up becoming the head of the story department as a lead writer on Hogwarts Legacy?
Well, so Avalanche has a really long history. I think the company is a little over 30 years old now. They worked on a lot of projects over the years. I actually started in animation. I was the assistant director on a film called The Princess and the Pea, which was an animated musical.
Oh, yeah.
And then I was the animation director on The Velveteen Rabbit. That you might have seen that on Netflix. But
Absolutely.
I wanted to stay in Utah because that's where our family's located. I wasn't really looking to leave our family behind. And that work dried up, and that's when a friend of mine told me that Disney Interactive had a studio in Salt Lake City. So I applied there. They hired me as a senior story artist, which means I do storyboards and writing and everything that sort of entails on Disney Infinity, which you've probably heard of. It was a pretty popular game.
Absolutely.
I still have kids come up to my convention tables 10 years later and say, I'm so sad that game was canceled. And I said, me too. I lost my job. But so after spending close to a decade at Disney doing that as a senior writer and then a lead writer, toward the end, right before Disney laid us off, they actually made me the head of the department. And then Disney shut us down. And we spent the next 3 months working with the head of the studio to try to pitch something to another studio to pick us up so we could rehire all these people that had just lost their job and their livelihoods. Mm-hmm. And Warner Brothers was one of those interested parties, and we went to them with our pitch, and it obviously went really well. So the whole time I was at Avalanche at Warner Brothers, I was the head of the story department. So that entails okay, I have an overview of the story. I'm going to that doesn't mean I wrote everything. It never means that. It just means that I was managing a lot of storylines going on at the same time with a lot of different incredibly talented people that did a lot of the heavy lifting. but I had to kind of oversee, like, how does this fit into the big picture? And I worked with the designers a lot, sometimes daily. And I had to like schedule voice recordings and things like that. But that's kind of how I got there. I just was making my way up through the ranks, proving that I had some chops, and that I guess for what they needed, showed some leadership ability that they were appreciative of. So that's how I became the head of the department and a lead writer.
That's awesome. What a great privilege.
It was.
Oh, man.
Very much so.
Well, great. This is our guest, everybody. We're really excited to have you, Adrian.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we're really excited. And listeners, you may have, put 2 and 2 together by now. But today, for episode 44, we're gathered to discuss Order of the Phoenix, chapter 32. No, we are discussing all the ins and outs of Hogwarts Legacy with, the man who figured out all those ins and outs. So instead of recommended reading, we have recommended playing this time, which is, play Hogwarts Legacy.
Yeah, go buy Hogwarts Legacy, and in 200 hours, come back. And listen to the podcast.
Yeah. So we're going to issue a spoiler alert for Hogwarts Legacy. Now, personally, I haven't actually finished the game. I'm like 2/3 of the way in. Uh-huh. So, like, if we could try to leave off some of the later stuff. I've looked up a few things, so, like, it's not a huge deal. But, definitely for the first 2/3, full-on spoiler alert.
I'm sure, Irvin, the podcast will be fine if you are just going la 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 for most of the conversations. It'll be a great audio experience.
Yeah, a little bit of extra work for Patrick.
Thanks for saying the finale of our game wasn't a huge deal. I do appreciate that.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the little things,
Well, we would just like to send a huge thank you to Sam Oman over on our Patreon, who bought us this round of drinks at the pub.
Woo! Thank you, Sam.
If you, dear listener, would like to buy us a round at the pub, head over to patreon.com/3broomsticks. That's with the numeral 3 to sign up. We're offering bonus content, chats with the hosts, on-episode shout-outs to our patrons. We have a lot of great content up there and more being added kind of all the time. So lots of interesting information, including Sam and I's Hogwarts Legacy playthrough.
Yeah.
Which the first 2 episodes are up as of September 1st. So you can go ahead and take a look at that as well. So we'd really appreciate your help keeping the lights on here at the 3 Broomsticks so that we can keep talking about Harry Potter for a long time to come.
A long time indeed. Adrian, you should know that when we made the character on the character, all the different options that you have, we brought a D20 out and we did rolls for each option. So our character looks wonderfully incredible. And also, we rolled D20s for the to find the name for the first name and the last name. So we'd roll like a D8 to get that's going to be Order of the Phoenix. Then we'd go to the chapter and the page, and the first name we saw would be the name of our character, and the last name that we saw on a different roll would be the last name of our character. So our character is named Dobby Edgecombe.
Okay.
It's pretty fantastic.
Oh my god, who names him Harry Potter?
No, because Marietta Edgecombe isn't dead.
As far as you know, depending on just how evil Hermione got, okay? Maybe that curse finally did her in.
Oh, man.
Sneak just bores into her brain. Great, lovely. Hey, all, in order to not bog down Adrian with tons of discussions about dragons from episode 41, Dragons, we are doing this as he's already departed from our lovely Skype call. So, let us offer a toast to the comments on episode 41. The episode was our multi-fandom crossover all about dragons. Or wyverns, really.
Or the 85 other things that Sierra listed.
All right. Touche. We raise our glass to commenter Christian, who said, on this note, Knowing that birds are actually the direct descendants of dinosaurs, could the right intention behind the spell, Avifors, cause something to be transfigured into a dinosaur? That would be an interesting dueling mechanism, even if you're making little campsies to cause chaos. Little compies. So sorry. Even if you're just making little compies to cause chaos. Sorry, Christian. I know you will needle me forever about this pronunciation.
I mean, I did not think that there would be magic about creating dinosaurs until now, and I was wrong. This makes a lot of sense.
I love the idea of somebody figuring out that instead of a parcel tongue, they're a dino tongue, and they're like, oh my god, I didn't know. And they're like, oh yeah, over at Ilvermorny, the people that headed up Thunderbirds, that house was founded by someone who's a dino tongue, and they're super cool.
How would you know you're a dino tongue? There are no dinos for you to talk to.
That's the point. That's the whole thing, is that you would only discover it because a dino pops up in front of him, because someone goes Avifors, and little Compy pops out, and he's like, hey, snap that dude's neck. And the Compy's like, you got it.
Okay, so this Compy is going to be much more
neck.
And it's also going to be much more obedient than the snakes you conjure with Serpent Sorcia, where it just kind of lunges at the first thing it sees.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Just
classic Irv and Sam interaction.
Yeah, classically, color me a little skeptical.
One of my friends the other day said to me, press X for doubt, and I've been using that forever and ever and ever. So
yes.
press X for doubt there, Irvin.
Yeah. No, I press X for the epic, powerful, ancient magic powers I have.
Avifors. Now this statue is a T-Rex.
Yeah, you know what? They should really animate that into Hogwarts Legacy too.
I'm sure
I'd be down.
You would love to walk around on a T-Rex and have it eat the spiders.
No, because then the spiders get way too close to me.
Oh, okay. So just stomping on
The
them.
reason I like Glacius and Confringo is because I could do it at like f***ing 1,000,000 miles away.
No. No, you don't. Run, cast. Run, cast. Run, cast.
Yeah, like that whole like summon them and do Incendio. No, not for spiders. That's for Inferi. Spiders, we duel at a distance.
Freeze you and then cut you. Freeze you, then cut you. Freeze you, then cut you. Ugh. Yeah, man.
I would, okay, but back to dinosaurs.
Yes.
Yes, I think that I don't know why that wouldn't necessarily work if you had all of the right, I mean, because magic is so much about intention. So I don't know if you understood all of the details behind it. I don't know. I feel like you could. And that would be really awesome.
Sierra, you're so busy wondering whether you could. You're not asking whether you should.
You son of a gun, Irvin. Oh my goodness.
So good.
I'm very pleased with myself.
You know what's fascinating? I think that was our first but going back to statement from you, Sierra. The whole podcast, we didn't do that. I think that's a first. That's our first time of just not saying, but going back to, because we kept on track this time.
Wow, did we really? I think we really did.
Yeah. I think we really did.
I think there was maybe like one or two moments.
You know what? Listeners, we've done the main interview already, so you're about to listen to it. Would you please comment how many, but going back to statements that we do with Adrian, because that'd be great.
Yeah, mind you, we are not saying that this should be a drinking game during our regular podcasts because, well,
you will get
they're
drunk.
2.5 hours long
harm.
And you will end up with liver poisoning.
We don't want anybody in the hospital.
No.
Or in dialysis.
All right, on that optimistic note, back to Hogwarts Legacy.
On to the main discussion, y'all. So we have a certain number of categories here. We're going to be talking about pre-game research with Adrian, how the writer team makes decisions, specifics, and questions about the game itself. A shout out to Ev, who did a lot of research for this as well and isn't able to be with us on this podcast, but she has some questions in here, so thank you, Ev. And we're going to start off with the first pre-game research. Dear Adrian, what games influenced the style of Hogwarts Legacy? Was it games like Elder Scrolls, Elden Ring, Dragon Age have an influence, or perhaps other big franchise games like Spider-Man, Star Wars, KOTOR, etc.?
Yeah, so first off, I'm not going to name drop people at the studio, even though I'd love to give them credit for some of the stuff they did, because I haven't asked for their permission,
of course,
honestly, and they don't want to be, publicly sought. I don't want that for them. But that is mostly influenced by the design team. However, I know there was a lot of influence from Skyrim and that category of games. I came at it from a much more narratively focused situation, such as Uncharted, Red Dead Redemption, The Last of Us, those sorts of games.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
later on, Spider-Man was a really lovely game. But I think when the decision came down that we wanted it to be open world, those sorts of games started being less relevant. I still wanted to take pieces from those games. These are fantastic stories. People actually care about these characters. We should pull that through. I don't feel that that's true of Skyrim, for example. I feel like it has some of the clunkiest dialogue that's ever been typed. And part of that is just a manpower issue and a time issue. I no writer on Skyrim is going to want to be known for that, but the limited amount of barks they were able to put in that game makes it really hard to repeat the lines over and over, and that I care about that a lot. But so we wanted to figure out a way to make you feel like you were having the experience of being at Hogwarts the same way Harry was, but it's your own adventure, and you can't do that if you curate that adventure. You have to actually make it more open, give them options of things they can do and how they can respond, so that it truly is the player's own experience. It's not what we've decided the player's experience should be. And you can't do that with games like Uncharted and Spider-Man, because they want you to be a specific character. So lots of things influenced it. Honestly, every time a new awesome game came out, there was a discussion for about 3 weeks. Let's take this from this game. Let's be inspired by this part of this game. We can't keep changing the game just because you're excited about a new game, guys. But a lot of really wonderful, fantastic games influenced the design of Hogwarts Legacy from that perspective. But it was an iterative process. We learned what our game was over time, and the resulting game, I don't think, was a copy of anything. It was fairly innovative. I think the designers did a fantastic job. The game director did a fantastic job. But it's just I come from the animation side of things. When I'd go see a Disney film, I'd go, oh my gosh, that's some really amazing technique they just tried there. And so I'd want to plus that. And so it's all about how can I raise the bar a little bit from what I've seen before? And so that's what we were always trying to do. So hundreds of games influenced Hogwarts Legacy. Let's see. There was one that I was going to mention. It's an indie game. Life is Strange. Even that had influence on the game. So, it was all over the place. And that's the longest answer I could have possibly given you for that.
No, we love it.
Yeah. So kind of still on that same influences idea, did any of the other older Harry Potter movie games, for Nintendo Advance or the console games, influence the style, or any of the current mobile games and whatnot, like Hogwarts Mystery or Wizards Unite, R.I.P.
R.I.P.
Were any of those kind of a draw as well?
I mean, we looked at them. They're for older gen game systems, a less matured gaming audience. And so there was very little chance that something like that was going to really influence it. Also, those games were, I've spent most of my living making movie tie-in games, and Avalanche is very unique and special in that they don't make movie tie-in games, even though they've made so many of them. They make good games that happen to tie into a movie. And there's a huge difference. If you hire some outside company and say, here's X amount of dollars and here's your deadline and it needs to match this story, they'll go, okay, we'll do that, and maybe the game will be okay. And a lot of times it's not. We've all played movie tie-in games. We're like, oh man, this is a bomb.
Yeah.
But that was never good enough for us. And so we would look at lessons learned from those games, but because they were older gen games and because they were intended to be movie tie-in games that were more about celebrating that you like a movie than they were about innovative gameplay. I don't think a lot came from that. Also, we had, and maybe me on a little bit of a personal note, had an idea that even though this game would probably never be blessed as canon, I didn't want to put anything in the game that made it feel like it couldn't be blessed as canon.
And bless you for that.
Because everything should match up with either a movie version or a game or a book version of something.
Yeah. And
we put a lot. I mean, I can't even express to you how much research went into that, because there's a truth in character, right? And when I worked at Pixar or with Pixar, one of the things that they always told me about was, like, you want to do a brand deposit, not a brand withdrawal. It strengthened the brand. And so it felt like if we put something in this game that if somebody plays and they go, well, hang on, that doesn't work with me imagining this as part of canon, because I know that's not true 100 years later. That would have been devastating to some fans, and I don't think they would have forgiven us for it. So we tried really hard not to do that, and that was our main focus rather than looking at what past games had done.
And as one of those fans, can confirm, nothing in this game has offended me, which, like, if you know me, is shocking.
I mean, my subterfuge work on Reddit with a different username hasn't seen anything that goes like, oh no, we really messed that up. So, yeah.
I mean, if Irvin's impressed, it means you did your due diligence. Irvin might be the person that you were trying to avoid pissing off.
Yeah.
I mean, like, how much more fun did you have feeling like you didn't have to be guarded about caring about the story from Harry Potter? Like, this is just part of the wizarding world. It doesn't feel canceled.
I mean, that is what I wanted. So I've given this spiel a million times, but basically, like, what I want from all the brand extensions of Harry Potter is the world, not the story. Like, it's why I was so excited about the Fantastic Beasts movie franchise when it was announced as a, like, oh, we're essentially catching Pokemon like 80 years before Harry Potter was alive. Great, I love that. And then it became this whole, like, backdoor prequel into Dumbledore and Grindelwald and whatever. So, like, the fact that, like, Hogwarts Legacy is just in the same world, and you might recognize a few last names, but it is completely its own thing. I was like, this is all I ever wanted from any brand extension of Harry Potter.
We used to joke that the pitch of this game was, this will make people buy a PS5. Just so that they can play the game.
It did. I literally had to get a gaming laptop just to play this game.
Yeah.
Like, I don't play video games, but I was like, I mean, I got to.
My husband and I bought a second console.
Oh, you did? Did you really?
We did. We bought a second console so we could both play at the same time.
My wife and I had to just, like, split who was upstairs and who was downstairs because neither of us wanted spoilers. So I'd, like, go upstairs and put on headphones and listen to music loudly, just hugging myself to sleep because I was so frustrated I wasn't playing.
I mean, this is why it was the best-selling game last year.
Yeah,
we were buying multiple copies.
Yep.
So actually, I want to ask, because the fact that, like, there are no mistakes in this game, like, what kind of research did you do to make it canon compliant? Like, you're obviously a big Harry Potter fan. I think you started with the series before I did, before most of us did in the 90s. But, like, did you have to reread the books? Did you, like, go on the lexicon? Sort of, how did you make sure, what kind of research did you do?
Everything. Like, so when you're doing franchise work like this, where it's an existing brand, I think the best thing you can do for the audience is to figure out what makes you the biggest fan of that franchise possible. Like, if you're making, I made a game for Bolt, for Disney.
Yeah.
And you have to know why this is appealing to fans. You've got to, like, or Cars. I actually like Cars, so that wasn't hard. But you spend a bit of time figuring out, why is this appealing to people? What do they love about it? What are the tent poles of this particular product? And you become a super fan. You have to, because if you're going to give this to the people that love this product, they're super fans, and if you aren't a super fan, you're going to hurt their feelings. You actually are. I think it's an incredible honor and a responsibility to be given the chance to work on something like the Wizarding World and not make it bad for people. Like I take that very, very seriously, and I know all the other writers that have worked on this game did as well. And we didn't really have people trying to like put in their like, here's my twist. I want it to be my story. It never was my story for any of the writers. It was always the story. Which is a big difference, because if you try to insert some brand new twist into Harry Potter that doesn't fit with the existing lore, people sniff that out almost immediately. It's not great. So we did a lot of research. We had access to the company, and so we were able to like see things that were going on, and they gave us digital copies of all the books, and J.K. Rowling has written a great deal of history of this universe. Yeah. That's there for the taking. Like, I'm sure after playing this game, people scoured to look for us making a mistake on some of the dates and things like that. And I hope we didn't. We probably made some minor mistakes here and there, honestly. But we did our diligence to try not to do that. And it was because of her brilliance in world building that we were able to do so.
Yeah. Follow-up question. You mentioned, like, you wanted to find, like, the tent poles of why people love this world. Like, can you share with us, like, what you found, like what you think are the tent poles of why people love Harry Potter?
Well, there really were two tent poles that I really gleaned onto, and we kind of adopted that making the game. One of them was choosing what's right versus what's easy, because generally in the books, characters that choose the thing that's easy or that will make their life easier aren't doing the right thing. There's a moral choice there. And then the other thing is we're stronger together than we are apart. Mm-hmm. And you see that with Harry, Ron, and Hermione so much. And I think that comes through with those special side characters you meet, Sebastian, Poppy, and Natty. And, there's a lot of characters in there. But you become a better character. You become a stronger character because you know those people. Mm-hmm. And so that's something that we really wanted to sell in our game. Those are the two biggest tent poles that I think we kind of gleaned in on.
I mean, I love that, and I'd say you nailed it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
That's fascinating. How did you manage to quell the egos or to bolster a lack of egos among the writing team to not want to like make this my story?
I don't feel like we had egos like that, really. Like, there might have been once or twice where somebody's just like, I want this idea and it's going to happen, and they weren't reasonable about it. But generally speaking, they're a pretty chill group. They're very cooperative. They're very collaborative. And I honestly, like, I don't know that I was 100% successful, but I didn't really want people on my team that were egotistical. Like, I wanted people that were collaborators. And you can't make a good product if somebody comes in and wants their ideas to be the ideas that are chosen every single time. Look, I was the head of the story department, and I look at the game now, and I actually have to say, like, oh, that was clever. Who thought of that? Was it me? Was it this person? Was it this? I have no idea. The head of the animation department had a really good saying, which is the best game is one you can play and you have no idea who did what. Because everybody's just so collaborative, and they're willing to sacrifice an idea that's awesome but doesn't work for an awesome idea that does work. It doesn't matter if we spend a little time developing or whatever. So I don't feel like, maybe with just a couple of small exceptions, I don't feel like there was huge egos in our department at all. And that's kind of a hallmark of the way Avalanche does things anyway.
Yeah. Huh. That's fascinating. So when you were doing all this research, did you do it before you nailed down the Wizarding World account, or was it kind of a mix of both before and after, or was it mainly just after the? I
mean, I literally started doing this research 20 years earlier. So by the time this came up as a possibility, it wasn't hard. Like, I didn't feel like I was void of information at that point. I did a couple of I picked at some books and things like that. And a couple other guys that are on the story team worked with me on a pitch that went to WB, and I think we pretty much had it solid. I feel like when you're working with a franchise, the very first months of that relationship, they're looking to see how careful you're going to be with their property.
That makes sense.
Are you going to take care of their baby? And if you don't, then they do what's called the Eye of Sauron, which means every decision you make is going to have to go before a committee because they don't trust you anymore. And my goal in the beginning, especially, is to make sure that they trust us. We understand you love this baby and it means the world to you. And we want you to understand that it means as much to us as it does to you. We will never harm your baby. And so if you can do that, then the relationship just gets easier and easier and easier. And I've done that with Disney, Pixar, Marvel, Lucasfilm, and Wizarding World. And it's so rewarding when you can get to that spot because you get to be very innovative at that point.
That's amazing. I know you kind of touched on how you ended up with Hogwarts Legacy, but how exactly did you get into video game story?
Well, so I was in animation story because I was a storyboard artist for so many years. And then when they hired me as a story artist at Disney, that was my first shot. I proved that I could do story, or else they wouldn't have hired me because Disney's a tough customer, right? So, but I got in there and I'm like, oh, I'm so excited to write these new stories for these beloved characters. And the first 6 months on that job were the worst of my life because I was trying to write movies. And there is anybody that takes my game writing course knows there is a huge difference between game writing and film writing. You have to let the audience be one of the characters and one of the writers. You can't say, and then do this, and then do this, and then do this. Like, let the player do something. It's an interactive product. And I had a really hard time learning that. But then once I did, I was just enthralled with the process of writing for games and creating these narratives with the player so that the player could write part of the story. I embraced it so fully. I just loved it after that point. But it was a tough go. But that's kind of how I got into the industry. And if I hadn't have learned that lesson, it would have been a pretty short relationship, I'm sure.
So actually, jumping on that, when writing for video games, how do you balance sort of the need for the audience to like make decisions versus like, you're trying to actually get places with the story?
Yeah.
Like if in Hogwarts Legacy, like what if your main character decides like, you know what? I don't care about fighting goblins. Like, sort of, obviously that wouldn't work with the story. So yeah, how do you thread that needle?
Let me think about that for a second, because it comes so naturally now. I don't think about it that often. But, I used to be like, well, don't meander around here because you're going to lose track of the plot thread that I'm trying to cater to you. But you know what? Players are smarter than we think they are. And if somebody wants to take a break and do something else for an hour, why can't they? They can do whatever they want. It's their story. And then they'll come back to it. We have ways in the game to tell you, like, okay, this is a required mission to finish the game. You can put it off as long as you want to, but at some point you're going to stop making potions and feeding animals, and you're going to actually want to get somewhere with this quest. So we're just going to leave it right here in your mission log. And when you feel like you're ready to take it on, we'll see you back here, and we're rooting for your success. I feel like you just have to do that. You let the player do something like that. When I was working on my first, I guess it was my second Cars game at Disney. One of the things that was really interesting for me is we do play tests, and kids would drive around Radiator Springs. There'd be a mission that, like, Luigi would give him a mission to go find his missing tires or some weird thing like that. And the kid would go, okay, thanks, Luigi. And then they'd just go drive around the town for an hour. And, there's a joke in the movie where Fillmore says, that light up there, that light blinks slower every third blink. Kids would literally stop their car, Lightning McQueen, that they were playing as, and wait for that third blink to happen just to see if we did it. And we did.
Wow.
And so they loved it. So they would stop at this intersection that we didn't make them stop at. And they would just play around. They'd go visit Flo's Cafe. They'd go up on the ridge and just drive around in the dirt and dink around as much as they want. And then when they got bored of it, they'd come back and say, now let's see, Luigi wanted me to do something. What was it again? And they'd look at their mission log and they'd go do the mission and they'd be fine. And it affected the story and the player experiences 0%.
Yeah.
But it gave the players so much autonomy to do what they wanted to do. It was magical.
I mean, I was guilty of that. That was me at the beginning of Hogwarts Legacy. My first 6 hours logged was just castle exploration.
Yeah.
Yeah. And same thing, I had to avoid the spiders. So when we got to a mission that was like, enter the forest, beware of spider signs. And I was like, no, but that's not happening.
You are foreshadowing a question coming up there, Irvin.
Yeah. I've been preparing for that question.
Speaking of questions, the next one is, was there any plans for Hogwarts Legacy to be, or at least the world that was created, the map created as a massive multiplayer online RPG? It's such a beautiful world. I guess we're wondering, is there any plans to like make people spend some more time in it? Options for interactions, like people meeting there as wizards and witches, but virtually,
or even like, was that already set when when approached with the game? I know, was it already like, this is the type of game that we're looking at, or was that like even a possibility?
It's always a decision. These are all discussions that were had, and people would get upset like, why didn't this happen in the game, or why didn't this happen in the game, or why didn't you have this feature? Honestly, we would love to have done that, but 300 plus people put their lives on hold for 7 or more years to slave over making this quality product, and they were maxed out. Also, like the Q, like, because this had branching dialogue in it, our QA department was incredibly taxed on play through the game and do choose every dialogue option in varying orders to make sure there's not a bug. That is by itself a Herculean task. And so it comes to the point where, like, yeah, we'd really love to have that feature. We don't have time for it. I can tell you a special story. Like I've mentioned before, I dissed on Skyrim a little. Sorry, Skyrim. But I was not a fan of the specificity and repeatability of different barks in the game. Like, oh, I'm helping my mother. I'm helping my mother. If I hear that line one more time, I'm going to punch that little kid. But so I wanted to have a really robust line count, and our mission designer lead wanted the player to be able to be recognized for different accomplishments in their world. And so we wrote probably around 250,000 lines of dialogue for the game.
Wow.
And at one point, one of our tech leads came to me and said, like, hey, great, we can fit your dialogue on the disc, but that just means we can't put the game on the disc. And so we had to, okay, there's a problem. Audio is really expensive when you consider, I think we translated into 10 languages, and those are all in the disc. So for every line we wrote, there was 10 versions of it. And you have to remember that for every avatar line we wrote, there was 2 versions of it, because you could choose your voice and your gender and stuff like that.
Right.
So it added up really, really heavily, and to the point where I think we ended up shipping with between 68 and 75,000 lines. I wasn't quite there when that happened, so I'm not sure, but I think it was in that ballpark, and that's just so that we could get it on the game. Wow. There was a team in charge of the combat system, and they worked their butts off making that look good. And there's animators that were in charge of like making sure the wand movements were correct and canon. And there were people that worked, like one of my favorite, like, talented writers on the team did an amazing job doing all the little conversations that you can come across in Hogwarts if you go into the houses, in the common rooms. And that was a full-time job. And each of the writers that had a character like Natty or Poppy or Sebastian, that was a full-time job for at least one person and usually more. And everybody was just so taxed. The concept team kept getting more requests for things. And we had a cinematics team that kept growing and growing and growing. When we decided to do the pensive memories as full-on high-quality cinematics, that expanded our budget. So it was never a choice of like, why didn't they want to do that? It was always a choice of, oh, that's too bad that they had to give that up. George Lucas once said, you never finish a movie, you just have it taken away from you. And I think that really is apt for the development of Hogwarts Legacy. Everybody passionately wanted all the things that you wished you had in that game. But what you got left with, I hope, is satisfying.
Very satisfying.
I think.
Yeah.
So Adrian, you mentioned this one time in the video game class. How many, by the end of Hogwarts Legacy, when you shrunk it down from 250,000 lines of dialogue to that, how many movies worth of scripts did you guys end up writing for that game?
Well, I've estimated it in my head. I think it's probably between 25 and 28 movie scripts worth of dialogue.
That is one of the most fascinating facts about video game writing to me that came out of this was how many worth of, you think a movie, great, it's big, it's the biggest thing you can get on the screen for one set, and then no, these video games 25 at minimum. That's amazing.
What happens if you play Hogwarts Legacy for 200 hours and nobody talks? That's not. You have to support everything. You have to support everything. You
kill a lot of spiders.
And there's got to be sound effects that support it too, and effects animation. And it's a huge game. And it's people are like, oh, how come it took 7 years? I'm like, how? Avengers took 4 years. That's just one movie.
That's so true. Yeah, that kind of information is absolutely fascinating. There is, I won't say specifically, but there was a game that I was doing some other digging on, and I happened upon a fact that with the dialogue in it, it was more than all the seasons of Game of Thrones combined with all of the cutscenes and the dialogue. And I was like, that's incredible.
Insane.
I mean, that
AAA games come to play. They don't mess around with that stuff anymore because audiences are too knowledgeable about what's available.
Yeah, totally.
It's fascinating. I mean, it's just, there's so much. And also, I mean, it's impressive just how much gets written and then what the consumer actually sees. Like the player sees the 65,000 lines of dialogue, not the 250, and yet all of that's there somewhere.
I mean, I'm sure I talked about this in class too. I don't know how many times we started over from scratch on the story, but it was more than once. I think it was maybe 3 times. That means there was elements that we liked, but they weren't, the way we cooked them didn't taste good. So we readjusted the recipe. The quantity of this is going to be lower. The quantity of this is going to be higher. We redid that a lot. And I go back to Pixar a lot, but they gave me so much education on storytelling.
Right.
Every Pixar movie at one point was really bad. I've seen screenings of them that were really bad. But by the time they're finished, they're usually pretty solid. I mean, they maybe have some that are like an A- instead of an A+, but their movies tend to be pretty good. And the reason for that is iteration. They will look at a story, they'll have a screening, and then they'll go, okay, something wasn't quite working right. Let's be totally frank and honest. What didn't work? And they don't have this ego of like, oh, your idea didn't work, so you're going to get fired now. No, it's just like, oh, we tried something and it failed. So we learned something from that, and we're going to make a better game or a better movie next time. So that was the same thing that was happening at Avalanche for the entire course of production. And there's so many wonderful things that didn't make it into the game that I really wish had of. There's a lot of things that didn't make it into the game that I look back at now and I'm like, oh, that's probably a good thing. But there is a lot of really passionate, amazing ideas that just didn't quite make it in there.
Yeah, of course.
So let me ask you, right? So in this 7-year timeline, which is mind-boggling, was there a point where it clicked and you were like, oh, this is what we're doing, this is working, it's all gonna happen like this? And when was that?
I think there was a point where we kind of figured out, and again, I don't mean to take sole credit for this, because there's a lot of incredibly talented people that were involved in this decision. So when I say it that way, I just don't want to be misconstrued, because I have a lot of dear friends that still work at Avalanche. There was a point where we had figured out it was going to be third-person cameras. We were going to have a protagonist that didn't have a backstory that the player had to adapt or adopt, and that we were going to set it in a time period in the lore where there wasn't a lot written and Dumbledore hadn't started school yet. And I think we were almost there. Like, I feel like, okay, it just needs a little something more to tie it in to Hogwarts, so that people are like, yeah, this is a product I will imagine. Like, I felt like I wanted to have a canon thing in there that really like tie it all together. And that's when I realized that Phineas Nigelus Black could be the headmaster. Yeah. And so I suggested that, and they're like, yeah, that would be really funny if it's like an anti-Dumbledore. Because he's literally, in the books, they say he's the worst headmaster Hogwarts ever had. Like, that's an actual line she wrote. And I'm like, that's gold. That's really entertaining for us. And so I pitched that idea. They went for it. I think, like, at that point, I felt like we were off to the races. And that probably happened about 3 years into production.
Wow.
So, but it's just that, like, somebody did this, like, somebody figured out the time period we could put it in, and then somebody figured out what the player identity should be. And then I came in and it was just like, the only thing that felt like it was missing a little bit, and I did this multiple times throughout production, it was like, okay, yeah, but what's going to make people go, oh yeah, like from Harry Potter. Like, I wanted people to look at this game and feel this is something I know, but it's not the way I expected to see it.
Yeah.
And that's the mark of a good writer, is somebody who can actually give you something you're expecting, but in a way you would never have expected. And so I felt like that combination, that stew, really gelled nicely. And I'm pretty proud that Phineas Nigelus Black made it into the game. That actually inspired me on another issue, which was I got to write the announced trailer. I got to write the script for the announced trailer.
Oh, you did?
Oh. I did. And the one thing that they gave me that I am always going to be so grateful for is I said, okay, this is a long shot, but I'm going to ask for it anyway. Jim Dale narrated the American audiobooks. And if we have him narrate that trailer, immediately people are going to go, I recognize that voice. This is Harry Potter. This is a Harry Potter product. And so they let me do it. I got to actually voice direct Jim. And it was such a dream come true. I remember him from like Pete's Dragon when I was a little kid. He was the villain in Pete's Dragon. So I got to voice direct him, and I am so proud of that trailer, because I felt like that was that little thing I put in there as a subconscious nod to the fans to say, you know what, we know Harry Potter like you know Harry Potter, and we want this to be relatable and familiar to you. And so we're giving you the voice of the audiobooks.
I gotta say, Adrian, just so you can hear it from a person, not that you already haven't heard it, but that I was buying the game regardless. But my wife literally saw me in tears when Jim Dale was narrating that. I was so touched by that.
That makes my heart very happy. I'm glad all the pain I had to go through, all the hoarse voices I had in meetings, like, you just have to believe me, it's a good idea. So I'm glad that it paid off for a fan. That's really important.
Well, we'll cut this audio out for you, and then you can just hand that as a thumb drive to anybody who did out to you ever again.
It'll be my new resume when I'm.
There you go.
Sam Williams cried. That's incredible. Is it a bit odd at, all this creativity? You're directing Jim Dale, you're watching over a whole writer's team. You see, hey, this person's Sebastian and this person's Sebastian, and you see all that creativity, the animations, everything come together. Is it then weird to see all that creativity quantified in $70?
At this point in my career, I don't feel like I felt that way, because the only thing you worry about is like, okay, we're going to give this to the world now. At some point, this is going to stop being our story, and it's going to belong to other people. And I've been there so many times in my career where I finished, like, The Velveteen Rabbit is a very beloved movie, apparently. Lots of people,
Yeah, absolutely.
stalk me online about that. But once you finish making something like that, it doesn't belong to you anymore. You give it to the world, and the world gets to decide how much they like it or how much they hate it. And so the only thing that made me a little bit, like, nervous and it's always irritated me is like, okay, I think I made a really nice thing. I think our team did a fantastic job, but will the world respond to it the way we think they will?
Yeah.
And you just hold your breath, and then those early reviews start coming in and you're like, oh, okay, I'll breathe a little bit of sigh of relief. And then the larger reviews come in, and then, people on Reddit that I'm secretly stalking start talking about stuff, and it really makes you feel good. And so I love that. It's kind of like this magical witching hour when you finish a product and you're so proud of it and you're going to release it out in the world to see if they're going to, like, kick you or praise you. Yeah. And it can go either way, honestly. I mean, I've seen some amazing games and films get horribly panned, and it's not their fault at all. Yeah. And those poor people worked really hard on those products. Mm-hmm. And nobody went into those products thinking, I'm going to make a really bad product for the audience. They all were trying to do right. Not. Yeah, no, that's not a thing people do. Nobody's trying to sabotage their own work. So to have it come out and to feel like, okay, we made some good decisions on that game. We did a good job. We had a lot of talented people. And I've been lucky enough to have lightning in a bottle twice with my career. Disney Infinity in the Toys to Life game market was revelatory. Like, it was a game changer for all ages games. And then Hogwarts Legacy sort of did the same thing. And we had some really great characters to work with, but we had to not screw it up. So it doesn't feel weird to me. Like, I do feel like $70 is, like, not commensurate with the amount of work, the amount of, all the times that people stayed late at work for 3 hours and didn't have dinner with their families because they wanted to get something right, or when it was close to release date and somebody had to give up their summer vacation so that they could get something working correctly in the performance capture or something like that. That $70 doesn't tell you those stories. $70 doesn't say, hey, this person, like, passed out on the job because they were working too hard because of the passion they had for the game. Or, this person fought every day for a year and went and debated with people about something that they really believed in, and they finally got into the game and the people are responding to that. Nobody hears those amazing stories from the creators. And so what I care about more than anything is, like, if me doing interviews like this can be a conduit to say, like, hey, game devs, thank you so much for your sacrifices, because we know it was a sacrifice. This game should have been 20 years to make, but the fact that it took 7 is not without consequence to the people that made it. So that's where I kind of fall on that issue.
It's amazing. Moving into our next topic, which is how the writer team makes decisions. First and foremost, what was the main goal for you guys when you were creating the main character, the playable character? Yeah, so
that was our game director had a really strong vision that they didn't want to have, a backstory. But then it was like just testing options. Like, do we give him, like, when they talk to people at first, are we going to give them, like, a choice of things they can say as their backstory so that the player can vote on what they want their backstory to be? Do we just want to hand wave it completely? And, so you all know what happened in the final version, but that was the big thing. And we also wanted to give him a companion character that would be sort of important to him throughout the entire journey. And because we didn't have an Albus Dumbledore character, we wanted something that felt familiar. So Professor Fig came into being for the same reason.
Wow. Yeah, I love their dynamic. It's very...
absolutely.
And I think the guy that did the voice of Fig is fantastic. I think he's an exceptional actor.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, can I just go out of order while we're on the topic of Professor Fig? Because
absolutely,
I have very serious questions. So, spoiler alert, for Professor Fig, I had to look this up, but playing Hogwarts Legacy, and I talked about this with a friend, and we agreed, you so obviously assume that Professor Fig is evil. It's right there. The game starts with him, a grown-ass adult, asking a teenager to keep secrets from all the other adults. And just like every time he talks, I was like, oh, he's absolutely the villain. Like, don't trust him. Like, every time I had an option of like, do you tell Professor Fig? I was like, no, don't tell him anything.
Yeah.
And so then he wasn't a villain. So my question is, like, did you ever consider making him a villain? Like, is there, like, remnants from that left in the game? Or, like, did we just read that completely
Or is
wrong?
Irvin just crazy? Because I side with Fig
It's
every
not
time.
me.
I love
It is
Fig.
not just me. I was talking to my friend Maya, and she was like, I mentioned we'd be interviewing, and she's like, ask him about Professor Fig. He has to be a villain, right?
So
it's not just me.
Well, Adrian, you should also know that Irvin's least favorite character in the whole world is Hagrid. So, tomato, tomato. It's a little bit of salt.
Oh. Like, why? That's sad. Hagrid's nice. He carries Harry's dead, lifeless body crying back to Hogwarts. But, yeah.
Right, but he
jerk.
should have already been dead by then. Yes.
Okay, so I'll answer it this way, because I'm not going to give you a direct answer. If J.K. Rowling was on your podcast, would you ask her the same question about Snape?
Yes, 100%.
What do you think she'd say to you? Back off, that's a precious character to me? Probably.
No.
She would. But, yeah, you know what? The amazing thing and the entertaining thing about Fig is that you have questions. You're not quite sure of where your allegiances should lie, so it makes your moral dilemmas a little stronger. Because what if this is all a ruse? Like, over time, you have to learn how to trust Fig.
Yeah.
And I think that happens really gradually, but naturally. And yeah, he doesn't do things by the books, but neither did Dumbledore. Mm-hmm. Dumbledore did a lot of things that he shouldn't have been doing, like apparating out of Hogwarts. That was a no-no. But but he broke the rules for the greater good, and history sort of marks him down as a hero. And I don't know where history is going to mark Fig down, but I think it's much more interesting to have a character whose intentions aren't clear, where his intentions make sense once you understand them, but you don't understand what way he's going to go. Yeah, we had lots of drafts of what happened with Professor Fig at the end, and I wouldn't have labeled any of them hero or villain. Honestly, he's a much more nuanced character than that. But there were times that we like, okay, maybe we make Fig do this at this point, and we'd go like, well, we're making a big statement if we do that here, and we'd talk through it and decide, I don't think that's who Fig is. One of the great things about getting new characters in the game is that it's like a lump of clay, and over the course of writing the game, you get to mold it. So you don't know what it's going to look like until you're done. And Fig kind of told us who he was going to be. It wasn't the other way around. Like, I don't think anybody put a tent pole down. Like, you're going to meet this guy and he's your professor sidekick, but he's going to be evil at the end. Like, nobody had like a motivation like that. So there's a lot of development there. And I know I'm not answering your question the way you're hoping me to, but we don't write stories like that where like, he's going to be the villain and we're not going to know until the end. Like, we wanted him to be much more nuanced than that. And so it was just a matter of like giving him choices throughout the game and letting him tell us, is this right for my character or is this wrong for my character? I would be lying to you if I said that by the end of the game, we weren't all just in love with the character. So we didn't want horrible things to happen with him, because we all loved Fig. Like, he was part of our family.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it figured very heavily into that, but we also knew that's a pretty powerful character. And I know that Harry Potter didn't know about Fig, so probably he's not around anymore. So, yeah, the nuances were more important to us than labeling him a hero or a villain. And I'm going to run for a politician. You can see I can answer as a politician.
Yeah.
Go to your local district.
You're so ready.
Running.
You're so ready.
So just to touch upon Fig for one more side question. This has been raging debate in this little corner of the internet that is our podcast. Is Arabella Fig and Professor Fig related?
I don't know how they could be. She has 2 G's.
Okay, all right, Irvin, you win.
That was I'm pretty
Doesn't,
sure that was
doesn't
right.
make any sense. I don't think 100 years is enough time to change a surname. Yeah.
Good answer. Good answer.
If they're staying in the same place and there's no sort of like weird immigration-iness going on, yeah.
I mean, the only thing I could think about is if Arabella Fig like had dementia and she just started adding a G to her name for no reason. But I don't suspect so.
Or maybe her wizard family made her add a G so they wouldn't be associated with a squib, and it's all very dark and tragic.
I mean, that is a plot line you could put in a book. I don't know if it's a...
Listeners, we want your Fig family drama
That's not a good
fanfics,
plot line.
and we want them now.
If you can make it a good plot line, that is your challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Look,
please.
I've gone down the rabbit hole. I have searched the internet because somebody told me I should check it out for Sebastian Sallow fan fiction. And there is one website that has over 100,000 Sebastian Sallow fan fictions. And
Wait, what website is this?
I'm not promoting it.
Oh, fine. I can Google.
I'm
That's
sure
fine.
I know what it is, Irvin. I'll tell
Once
you.
you go down that rabbit hole, you can't get out of it. So I strongly urge you. It's like the forbidden section in the library. Like,
Yes.
maybe avoid it.
As someone who is like 30 fanfics deep in the last like couple months, it is a rabbit hole.
Yeah,
It really is.
for sure.
I went away from fan fiction for a long, long time, and now that I have found it again, it just sucks you in.
Yeah.
It's so...
It's amazing to me that after 1 year, there's just so much. And I think the appeal of Sebastian and the writers that were assigned to work on his story did such a fantastic job to making him a fleshed out character.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I feel like the real appeal of Sebastian is like every girl meets Sebastian and thinks, I can change him.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how to explain it other than that
Yes.
because he's just so charming and he makes some good points. Like there's times where I was like playtesting it and he'd like make his case for, why is Cruciatus Curse forbidden, but a love potion that makes you fall in love with somebody against your will isn't. Like he'd say things like that. I'm like, yeah, he makes some good points. Wait a minute, I cannot go down this path with him. But you can get really drawn in to Sebastian, and I think
Absolutely.
I think that was what made him such a fantastic character.
100%.
Irvin, do you want to add in your additional question about Sebastian?
I have so much to talk to you about Sebastian Sallow because he is my favorite part of the game. Listeners, I am in a Sebastian Sallow t-shirt as we are recording because... So, my question about Sebastian Sallow is he meant to be madly in love with me? Or rather, with the protagonist, or is it just me? Because every time he looks at my character, it's just bedroom eyes. And, I mean, I will go along with whatever he wants us to do, like any
He did a
unforgivable.
fantastic job with his writing and his performance in the animation.
Yeah.
So that he's charming. I think
Yeah.
he's one of those characters that can hypnotize anybody. Like, I mean, he doesn't have the particulars of a Hitler where he could become like Voldemort, but he has the potential. Like, I think he could actually influence a lot of people to do things that he believes in. And so,
All kinds of
it's your
things.
story. You lived the unwritten. Is that the story you're telling about Sebastian? Because that's totally fine.
Oh, 100%. Hogwarts Legacy is a love story between me and Sebastian Sallow. Like, the rest of it is really just incidental.
Probably the most common comment people give me is that. Like, yeah.
Okay, I'm relieved it's not just me.
When I meet people at conventions and they ask me if I worked on Hogwarts Legacy, I say, yes. And did you play that? Yes. Well, who is your favorite character and why is it Sebastian Sallow?
Yeah, there is a right answer.
You said every girl meets a Sebastian and goes, oh, I can fix him. Every Irvin who meets a Sebastian goes, I could love him.
Every Irvin doesn't want to fix him. Okay, Sebastian is perfect right as he is.
So you're like visiting him in Azkaban and bringing him a cake with a file in it and stuff like that.
Oh, 100%.
Well, so Adrian, Sebastian was like one of your major creations, right? Like you got Phineas Nigelus you plugged in there, but Sebastian was also your baby, wasn't he?
So I can tell you the parts that I remember being involved in. like there's an idea that we needed to have a character to represent the appeal of evil in the game. There was a point in the game where the moral choices you made had a little more weight to them than what we finally shipped with because of iteration and things like that. So they wanted a new character. And so usually when they wanted a new character, they wanted to like that day start playtesting that character. So in order to put them in the game as a dummy character, we have to give them a name and a bio and all these other little nuances. And so I love alliteration when I'm naming characters. I think J.K. Rowling does too, honestly. But I was looking for names and I thought, Sebastian, that sounds very aristocratic and very proper. And then I'm like, now I need to find like a really like unpleasant last name for him. And I ended up with Sallow, and I'm like, oh, that's a situation where he told me who he was. As soon as I saw Sebastian and Sallow together, I'm like, yep, that's our guy. Because Sallow is like, it's like Gaunt, right? Like, which is another name that they use a lot. But it's like, pasty and like unhealthy, and there's something off somehow. And so he came up with that name. I came up with the ideas to like start him on that journey of like, he's gonna introduce you to some things that are not necessarily above board with the brand. Yeah. Like, like, let's sneak into the forbidden section, or let's do this, or let's do this. Because we wanted to introduce this idea that you could learn the unforgivable spells. Right. The unforgivable curses, I should say. And we needed a vehicle to do that, because we can't just sort of like, hey, you're just having fun, going along. Oh, yeah, by the way, do you even want to learn Avada Kedavra? Whoa. So we wanted to actually make it appealing enough that players are going to go, maybe I should learn that spell. And so we needed a character like that. Now, I was the first draft. I'm lucky enough to have created his name, which I'm very proud of. But after that skeleton work was done, I handed it off to, I think, 3 very, very talented writers that ran with the ball, and they developed that nuance. And one writer in particular, gave him that the idea that he lives in the margins of society. He doesn't label things as good versus evil. And so, that was kind of the genesis of that. And then my role at that point was just like sitting back and going, wow, that's great work. Hey, what if we just twist it a little bit like this? Or, when we play test it and we twist it a little more. And then I think I might have been involved in some of his recording sessions. I can't remember if I was or not, because that was a busy time for production at that point. But that was most of my involvement with Sebastian. He's one of my 3 big things that I'm personally proud of that made it into the game.
That's awesome. So you're telling me that you didn't want to learn Avada Kedavra during Christmas time so you could get some green light through the holes?
I said I was a Hufflepuff. I don't think that was unclear.
Yeah. Actually, can I ask the panel, did you learn the Unforgivables?
Oh, 100%. On the first playthrough? Yes. I wanted to go every direction, but I was playing a daring Gryffindor, so yes.
See, this is hilarious, because the other person, my husband, is also a Gryffindor and also learned them immediately on first playthrough. I, over here, Hufflepuff, did not learn them.
So I, as a Hufflepuff, have only learned Imperio because, frankly, Sebastian made a very good case. The other 2 I didn't.
You got duped.
Well, listen, like, Imperio, like, it's not really that different from, like, a bit of Wingardium Leviosa. Like, you're controlling someone's body either way.
Uses it. Is that
holy moly? Are you really validating this decision?
Harry uses it. Draco uses it. Everyone and their mother uses it.
Oh my gosh.
If that's what you tell yourself so you can live with yourself, that's fine.
It's what I tell myself so I can live with Sebastian. Just so
I did it so that in year 6 I can start creating Horcruxes. No, I'm kidding.
It's got dark really fast.
Well, okay, so speaking of pretty dark stuff, now there was a rumor on Reddit or one of the forums that you guys limited the spells that you could cast in the Hogwarts halls so that you weren't essentially walking through with a loaded gun in school. Is that correct?
Yeah, it absolutely is. We live in a world where school shootings are prevalent. Yeah. And when you're making something for entertainment value, you actually have a social responsibility. And I think that we all accepted that we had a social responsibility in that. It wasn't a mandate that came down from anybody. It's just it gives you the ick really bad. Like, yeah. There was not really a desire to allow people to go through Hogwarts murdering people. I think that would have been fantastically inappropriate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that has sort of picked up with other video games too since then, I've noticed. Like Star Wars Outlaws doesn't allow you to fire your weapon in public or fire your weapon while you're driving.
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah, we all have a responsibility in this world to, if we don't like the world the way it is, we have to do whatever is in our sphere of influence to make it better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well said. I will say, I definitely also learning about a cadaver makes the game very much easier afterwards. So, Irvin, if you want to kill spiders very quickly, make sure you learn about a cadaver.
Learn about a cadaver just to kill spiders.
Just to splash the spiders.
See, no, it's not satisfying enough. I'd much rather freeze them than blast them with flames. Like, I want to properly destroy them. I don't want a quick and painless death for the spiders.
There can be no question that they have been obliterated from existence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The spiders are not my favorite either.
I want them to be a 10 of dead.
Yeah, so how much was, like, basically the combination of exploring of the castle and the world versus the exploration of the characters? Like, were one of them kind of the main priority, or were they ever, like, was it ever a conflict between the two of, like, oh, we want to be able to explore the castle and the world, but then we also need to explore who this character is? Was that ever in conflict, or did you find that they worked fairly well together? What was the experience on that?
They played pretty nicely together, and when we'd play test it and it would feel out of balance, we'd call it out pretty quickly and adjust accordingly. But, feeling like we had to have something be the main thing that the player cared about was never really a topic, because it's you're holding the controller. You're the one that paid $70 for a Hogwarts game. Like, why are we telling you what you have to do? So that wasn't really ever like a motivating factor for us.
That's nice. It's good that was like an easy thing to blend. And I feel that way when playing through those side character storylines as well, because you're taken to different parts of the world and different areas and kind of, I mean, not forced to, because obviously you don't have to do them, but like encouraged to go and explore this new area. So that you can progress that storyline. And so I thought that was, I mean, I'm the type of person where it's like, okay, my quest marker is over there. Now I will do every single thing on the way to that item. And I will walk there the whole way until I get there.
One of the hardest things in the game development was populating that overland area with enough stuff to
I can
draw
imagine
your attention from the main quests, because that's important. Like that's the fun of play, right? Like that's you just want to encounter things. You don't want to walk through a forest for an hour and a half with nothing to see. So that was a massive effort, and there was one producer in particular that was over that with a strike team that developed out the little things you could see in the overland and encounter and all the like the dark wizards and things like that you could see, and that was just his whole job, was just
wow
populating the overland.
Oh man,
wow!
Thank you for the Nifflers. I love seeing them every time.
Oh my gosh!
Oh man, if I didn't love Nifflers already, I would tell you that the Fantastic Beasts made me fall in love with them so much. Especially the second film where you see this Niffler sniffing on the ground with his butt in the air, like Scooby-Doo style. I'm like, we have to put Nifflers in this game. There's no choice. I have, even now as we speak, I'm looking at my Funko Pops of the Nifflers. I have
those. Like, I have all of them with the babies.
If I see them on clearance anywhere, I buy more. Like, I just have baby Nifflers everywhere.
I love it.
I mean, possibly the most marketable Harry Potter merchandise that's ever been created.
Oh very arguably.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm not really a big Funko Pop collector. I have like some from the things that are more important to me, but for Harry Potter specifically, for whatever reason, when was thinking about getting them because it was the first pop figures that I was thinking about. I was like, I'm only going to do the animals.
Yeah.
Wise choice.
And that's pretty much what I have. I have Pickett and I have the Nifflers. And then I made an exception because I have Hadfoot.
Okay. Yeah. You followed the letter of the law, just not the spirit of the law on that one.
Exactly.
Well, and so speaking of animals, Adrian, was it part of the writers that made decisions on which creatures were going in, or did they say, we want these creatures in, please write a Phoenix story, please write a bits for all the room of requirement stuff and filling your zoos, etc.?
I would say we had a voice at the table, but it wasn't ultimately just our decision. You know, we informed, like, here's some animals that might be really interesting, but there were hundreds of people that weren't on the writing team that are diehard Harry Potter fans that already had some lists of things like that. Like Bowtruckles, they didn't make it into the game, but boy, oh boy, were they fought for. Like, occasionally there's just a thing that's just like, you know what, we do not have the resources to add one more thing like that. And that happened a lot of times, but we got this fantastic gift of Fantastic Beasts coming out when it did, because it introduced so many visuals of animals that we hadn't even considered as being possibilities for our game before. Like the Graphorn. That became a significant thing for us at that point. But there's a lot of things that are just like, you know what, we're all Harry Potter fans. There's a Phoenix in Harry Potter. Let's do something with that. We had to be very careful with the Phoenix because we know how rare they are, and that they're, especially after, the movies, we know like people hadn't seen one for a long time because they're known for being part of the Dumbledore family. Mm-hmm. And so we had to just be pitch perfect about the way we handled those things. But we had the voice at the table when we'd have discussions, we'd brainstorm, like, we could have this animal or this animal, and so we went through a lot of that. The mooncalves, I think, were just the easiest thing to get in because they're so ridiculous looking.
They're so cute.
Yeah, they just made it in naturally.
That's great.
Yeah.
Was adding the Snidgets in a easy decision, or was that something that people kind of fought for? Or?
We definitely, that was a store department fight for sure. I mean, fight is the wrong word because we weren't getting aggressively pushed back against, but we needed to do it right. Snidgets were rumored to be extinct.
Right.
And in our time period, that was true. And what a wonderful story you can tell that you actually saved the last of the Snidgets with your friend. Yeah. Poppy. And then you did it with the centaurs. Yeah. And all these other amazing things. Like, that is a big story. Yeah, it is. That could have been a game by itself, honestly. Mm-hmm. But yeah. I'm so proud of the writer that really worked hard on the Poppy Sweeting storyline, because the idea of Poppy getting redemption over her upbringing, making her understand that where you begin isn't where you need to end. Yeah. Which is the same thing Harry learned, really. Like, he's this kid that lives under the
cupboard. It's a very Regulus Black sort of storyline as well. Like, it really fits in with a lot of Harry Potter. But that's awesome.
I couldn't have thought of a better way to redeem Poppy's own mental state than to actually have her save animals that were thought extinct. Because she probably had a lot of thoughts in her head, like, did my family contribute to them being extinct? Right. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that goes on. But yeah, I was really thrilled with that. That was also, I believe, the first cinematic we saw come back.
Oh, really?
Really? That's fascinating.
Like, that's fantastic. I love it. I just love it. And I mean, I was involved a little bit on helping with the staging and everything like that. And we had a really good storyboard artist that was working with us that storyboarded the sequence. And I just felt like, oh, okay, this is starting to pay off. This feels really rewarding to me. So yeah, I loved the fact that we took this bit of lore that didn't have much written about it and we were able to expand it in a way that didn't take away from anything that existed.
That's extremely satisfying, just to be able to visit the Snidgets and have a moment with them. Because I feel like a lot of Harry Potter fans think of the Snidgets as these cute little, I want to protect items, these little guys that I just want to keep safe. And so to live that out was just phenomenal.
And, we don't really talk about much that they were the original ball in Quidditch.
Snitches, yeah.
But because that's obviously how they actually probably went extinct.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I think it's an adorable sequence. I think it's very heartwarming. And there is a type of player in Harry Potter that isn't looking to fight dark wizards. They're looking to save something. And that was a significant save, and I'm really proud that it made it into the game.
It's also really interesting to think about how, the game comes out, last year, 2023. For you to say, Fantastic Beasts came out while we were making it, that is so fascinating. You don't really think about how long it takes that you guys were able to get these visuals in process of making the games.
So the first 2 Fantastic Beasts movies actually came out during the making of the game, and the third one was filming.
Wow.
Yeah.
Actually, so talk of the whole animal storyline. I'm curious if you remember how it was conceived, did you sort of start with the fact that, you wanted all these animals and then were like, but then we can have poachers as an obstacle to the whole animal storyline? Or sort of did you come up with the idea of poachers as an adversary to begin with and then we're like, ooh, animals, yay?
Boy, I'm afraid I'm going to get it wrong because of my memory. Being an old guy, my memory's fading a little bit. But the fantastic writer, who I love to death, is responsible for a lot of that. I think she came up with the idea that Poppy came from the poacher family because of the dragon egg.
Oh, yeah.
Beginning of that storyline. And it just tied in so naturally. And so we had this rescuing the Snidgets idea, and we had the Poppy storyline, and I think at some point they just married each other.
Yeah.
I don't think they originally were there, but the writer had the forethought to say, what would make this really significant for Poppy saving the dragon egg is if her family would have done the exact opposite. And there's the dragon fighting ring in the in the tent that you see earlier, and I think that got married into it as well. That wasn't originally part of it. We had all these disparate pieces that were just, hey, this would be a cool idea, or hey, this would be a cool idea, and we slowly started to figure out how to build that puzzle and put them together. But Poppy being the daughter of a poacher is something that the writer came up with, if I remember right, because of the dragon egg. And
so per your framework of, there are no heroes or villains, so you say the poachers aren't villains? Or do we make an exception there?
Nobody has that little nuance to them.
All right.
I suspect that the poachers feel that they're doing something that's totally morally right for them.
Yeah.
It's more interesting that way for me anyway. But maybe I bet you Poppy's not the only person born into the poacher family that doesn't want to continue the family business, but has been forced to for financial reasons either. A lot of things people do in this world are not because that's what they want to do. It's because they would like to survive. And sometimes that's what happens. It's just sad, but it's the case.
What was the most difficult part of creating a unique story in the midst of already such a rich and developed world?
I can only answer for myself because I think everybody struggled with some pieces of it, but I felt like for my piece, it was don't screw it up. I know how many Harry Potter fans are out there. I mean, I've actually literally seen the market research, but when we were starting to get in, I think the first year of production, my wife and I took a trip to Universal Studios in California, and I just said I just want to hang out in Hogsmeade and just observe people, and the amount of people that showed up wearing robes was higher than the amount of people that didn't, and the line to get a wand was out the door, and even getting butterbeer. I just sat there and enjoyed the immense popularity of the property, and just rediscovered for myself why people love it so much. And it's not it's really clever what she's done. But you know, some of the reasons that people love it so much is because it's for them.
Yeah.
You know, I had this point where I took the test to see which house I was in, and I got Hufflepuff. And then I said jokingly to my wife, like, you should take the test to see what house you're in. And then I remember being so stressed that she wasn't going to be a Hufflepuff. Like, what are we going to do if she's not a Hufflepuff? And okay, I hate to break the illusion to everybody. It's a made up thing. It's not real. But
How dare you, sir?
when you do something that's so true to people's hearts that they adopt it as part of their own personality, boy, that responsibility is humongous. It's immense. It's like a cinder block on your chest sometimes. And so my biggest concern was, I don't want to let the fans down. I absolutely do not want to let the fans down. I probably took some debate bullets over the course of my career there, because front of mind was, I can't disappoint the fans. I cannot. I have to always be a good steward of this fan base. You know, sitting in Universal Studios, watching people go into the Three Broomsticks, plug, and enjoy a meal and looking around at all the architecture and everything, and going on the rides, and you know, just experiencing all of that was just a reminder to me of how important this is to the people of the world, and how many people just truly love the franchise for all the reasons that were intended. The fact that you can choose your house and you basically get a spirit animal, you know?
Yeah.
You get a Patronus. Mine's a gray mare, by the way. And I wish it was a cat, but it's a gray mare. But the fact that people can actually like take that in, like at the start of this interview, that was one of the important questions you asked me, is what house I'm in. Yeah. And I didn't take that lightly. I know it's just fiction, but actually that's a part of my personality, and I really care about it. And I can answer that question immediately because it matters to me. So I love that about the franchise. So that was the thing I was most worried about. Like, I can't let the fans down.
Amazing.
How do you balance paying homage to the franchise and like specifically the stories, and versus like not wanting to recreate them beat for beat? Like, you know, it struck me how well you guys like hit that balance in the opening, because, you know, you have a trip to Gringotts and you're there getting something mysterious, and you know, it definitely like was a clear callback to how it all began with Hagrid and Gringotts and Harry, but like it was different enough that I was like, oh no, this is my story, and it's a cool commonality that I have with Harry. Mm-hmm. So yeah, how do you toe that line?
So you touched on the third thing that I'm proud of, which is the idea that you'd go to Gringotts in the beginning.
Yeah, nice.
We have an amazing level designer that had done this fantastic journey to tutorialize you at the start of the game, but it just started in a cave, and then you went to Hogwarts. And when I watched that, and other people were saying the same thing. Like, this doesn't feel like a Hogwarts story to me. This doesn't feel like a Wizarding World story. And so we were racking our brains with what we could do to make it feel more like, oh, this is familiar. Don't worry, that we got you back. This is familiar. Because this is the start of the game. We don't want anybody to start playing and go like, are you sure this is a Wizarding World game? We don't want that. We absolutely don't want that, because, you know, if you could be on a journey with Gandalf and it's the exact same story, then we have failed. Yeah. And so we racked our brains a lot about that. And I actually remember the day, like I talked to the person who is now the head of the story department, the narrative director, and I said, you know, I've got kind of a crazy idea. What if we have them go to Gringotts to find this secret stuff? What if it's this really old Gringotts vault that hasn't been opened in hundreds of years because nobody's been around that can open it? And she said, oh, I like that. Like, it caught some traction. Mm-hmm. And I remember it was actually December 26th. It was December 24th. It was Christmas Eve. And we got together with the head of the studio and said, okay, I know we've done a lot of work on this opening, and it's going to mean that we have to like remove a bunch of it and go back to the starting line a little bit with a lot of it. But we think this would be better for the franchise if we can open with a really strong connection to the Wizarding World.
Yeah.
And so we pitched him going to Gringotts and all the things that happen there, the waterfall you go through and the steampunky sort of mine cars that you're on and stuff like that, and involve the goblins that way. And you know, it took a little convincing because we were really far along in production at that point, and it was going to be a major setback from a production standpoint to make that change when we did.
Yeah.
But we made a good enough case that it was a strong idea. And so that's the other thing that I was referring to earlier when I said there was 3 things about the game I was incredibly proud about. But I felt like adding that Gringotts thing at the very beginning solidified the player very quickly. Yep, this is Hogwarts. This is my Harry Potter. Like this game belongs to me, and I'm going to have my own adventure in it now. Plus, Harry goes to Gringotts in the first movie, and now you just got to do that too. You just started off your story, but it's completely different than the way that Harry did it. It's not a way you would have expected. It's the secret entrance that's hidden using ancient magic, and nobody could have accessed it that way except for you. And it's different than Harry's journey, but it's reminiscent. So that was the thing we were always striving for, is just to find the way to be reminiscent of plot points and not be too on the nose about it.
So still kind of like in that vein, was it more difficult to create like all new families and characters with their own lore, or was it more difficult to weave in like existing family lines, like Weasley, like Professor Weasley, or
Gaunt,
or ominous Gaunt, or something like that? Which one was more, I guess, difficult to? Yeah, I can't think of a better word than difficult, but
referring to existing families was more difficult because we had to really do some research.
Yeah.
The Black family was easy because there was literally a family tree.
Yeah.
So we could look at that a lot. And if we'd find something on Wikipedia, we'd have to double check it to make sure that Wikipedia didn't have it wrong even. There's a lot that went into that kind of stuff. But weaving in the families was a little more difficult, but in both cases, it was just a joy. Coming up with new characters was no less fun than coming up with existing characters. I think it's amazing that we got a Weasley as a professor.
Yeah.
I'm sure there is a percentage of the fans that always wished that one of the Weasleys could have been a professor at school. And, we have all of our student body. A lot of them didn't end up getting storylines, but a lot of them have names you've heard before.
Yeah.
So that was fun, but we just had to do our diligence to make sure that could actually be a thing that happened. Maybe there's not a character that existed in that spot. There's a black hole that we can use to support this idea. So we did when we could, and it was a lot of fun. I think the only place where the existing characters were easier was the house ghosts, because and Professor Binns, obviously.
Yeah.
Because they were there in that time period, and we didn't have to explain why. They were just there.
They were there.
And that was another thing that really solidified the player. Oh, yeah, I know these characters. They're familiar to me.
I'm also so happy that Peeves was there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's the first time anybody's seen a visual of Peeves.
Yes.
He wasn't in the films.
Because they cut him. They cut him from the first movie.
Yeah. So that took a great deal of work on the side of the concept department, and I think they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, he's pretty much what
spot on
picture.
Spot
yeah,
on.
a lot of people are I don't want to play that Peeves mission. He's really annoying. And I'm like, thank you. That's a compliment. He's exactly who he's supposed to be.
Well, have you seen, Adrian, a lot of the TikToks and reels and such that came out of, Jim Dale narrating over the scenes that were drawn, and one of them is Peeves. And so, he'll be narrating what Rowling describes the prefect's bathroom when you're entering the prefect's bathroom. So they're mashing those up together. Have you seen those? What do you think of them?
Yeah. We have, I think it's fantastic that people are picking up on that kind of stuff, honestly.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's great.
There's a really great world builder at our studio that is a super fan that just scoured the books for a line or a paragraph about anything and then tried to put it in the game.
Wow.
And that kind of love doesn't come free, but it's appreciated, I think, by the audiences.
Absolutely.
Yes. Also, where do we apply for that job?
It's already filled, unfortunately.
Dang it.
If we had hired everybody that came to the studio and said, "Hi, I'm a huge Harry Potter fan," like,
Oh,
we
gosh,
would have run
yeah.
out of money before the game was released.
The game's projected need for return on investment is $6
Yeah.
billion.
As long as we charge $1 million for every copy, we should.
Speaking of game footage, how did the game footage leak in 2018 affect the development, or did it at all? Like, did the game had to be rushed? Was there reactions to it in the studio?
No, we didn't rush anything. Everybody that went in to do that playtest stuff had to sign an agreement that they wouldn't bring in recording devices and that they would keep everything private. They signed a legal document promising to do something above board so that the world could get the Harry Potter game they've been waiting for 20 years. And the fact that they decided to thumb their nose at keeping that promise shows not only an utter lack of disregard for the game developers, but also the fans.
Yeah.
And that was a real morale kick, honestly. When you're working on a game and you're trying so hard to wait until everything's proper to really put it out there in the world, and then something like that happens, that person gets 15 minutes of fame, sure. But at what cost? Like, we should stop supporting people that do that.
Yeah,
All
I
these
agree.
things that leak, like, stop going to their website. Stop giving them likes and comments and things like that. Just ignore them, because that kind of fame comes at the price of somebody's hard work and effort.
Right.
And it was a morale hit for us, honestly, but we didn't change anything. Nothing about those leaks influenced what we were doing. I mean, but I don't think much of the people that would do stuff like that.
And speaking of sort of building relationships in the game, how do you balance the need to build relationships with other characters with the player's ability to make decisions about those relationships, i.e. Ominous and Sebastian, etc.?
That mostly came through the way you would respond to their questioning when you talk to them. We'd just give you that ability to have flavor in the way you talk to them and the things that they were willing to share with you. And at one point, we had a really robust system where you could actually talk to the professors and like really dig into their backstories. But we pulled back on that because it was actually pretty unrealistic. Like, it's kind of creepy that the professors were talking about their personal lives with the students. So that became less prominent in the game. But I don't think it was ever really a struggle or a balancing act. It was just when a natural conversation happened, we understood the personality of each character, and we tried to just write them to be in their correct personality.
Yeah. Going back to your comment about the teachers' personal lives, why does my character care so much about how all the professors came to work at Hogwarts?
That's a remnant of the things we actually pulled out. Yeah.
Okay, because that always pops up, and I was like, listen, I remember being 15, and in my mind, all my teachers, sprang into being in classroom 305, sort of, could never have done anything else with their lives, and clearly did not exist outside the classroom.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's where we, really pulled back on that, because it was starting to feel a little bit unrealistic. However, I will say, there are some amazing stories about some of those professors that you've never heard. And maybe someday you will. I don't know, but they all had pretty fantastic backstories that led them to Hogwarts, and
They all seemed very interesting.
if you knew how cool they were, you would have jumped at the chance to ask them those questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh no, I as me would jump at the chance. However, I playing as a 15-year-old
Yeah,
would absolutely not want to hear
yeah.
it.
What did you have for dinner last night? You're not in my class anymore. Yeah.
I need to know so much more about the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, for sure.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite, sort of, subplot or side quest or, little character arc buried in the story?
Oh, gosh, that's like choosing your favorite child. As a Hufflepuff, I think I am very much in the Poppy Sweeting camp. I watched that story grow and become something amazing and heartwarming for so long. And I know the backstory of the writer that worked on it so diligently, And I was so proud of that person for what they did with that storyline. How much of a struggle it was to figure out exactly the right recipe for that. I absolutely love that storyline. But you know, even as I say that, I'm like, oh, but you forgot about this one, and you forgot about this one. every story, I don't feel like there was any duds in the story, honestly. Like because I know why they happened the way they happened, and so I'm probably not the best person to ask that. Like, ask a fan what their favorite story is, and I'll go, yeah, that was a cool story. So yeah, it's a baby to me. Like I love it. I think it's really great. When I think about one of the side plots, I think about the struggles that somebody who I hold very dear had making that work, and what a success it was that they conquered that, you know, mountain. So I don't think I can separate that from the storytelling, honestly. Yeah. But I think if I was, you know, gun to my head, I think Poppy Sweeting, I just have a little extra place in my heart for.
I love that.
Yeah.
I guess now we're kind of moving into more of like really specifics of the game and specific characters, plot points, things like that. So one of those, obviously, speaking of Phineas Nigelus Black, Quidditch is canceled.
Yeah.
Was this something that was kind of always going to be canceled for story purposes? Was it to not step on the toes of like a purely Quidditch game? Was there
Quidditch
what was
Champions
kind of
just
like
came
the
out.
I guess an initial like
story reason
spark for that idea that we just wouldn't we would have flying but not necessarily Quidditch?
This is a pretty popular question too. Look, I remember earlier in the conversation when I told you that we couldn't put everything in the game that we would have loved.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of them. I mean,
Yeah.
we would have. Nobody at Avalanche is like, you know what? To heck with Quidditch. We're not going to do that. We all hate that part. Like, no. But Quidditch is a game in and of itself, and the mechanics that you have to have for those ridiculous rules to make it fun did not fit in our budget for the things that we were doing. There were many attempts. And we had to finally come to the realization that we're not going to have Quidditch in our game. But we were also smart enough with the franchise to know that's going to do nothing but beg questions from the audience.
Fair enough.
And so we had to come up with a reason for it.
Right.
And honestly, there's lore reasons that back up the decision we made. So I feel pretty good about it. They've canceled Quidditch before at Hogwarts because of a medical thing that happened. And yeah, we didn't belabor it. It just it's over with and done with, and you don't talk about it anymore. And we have some pretty cool flying stuff in the game and races and things like that. But there came a point where we just had to go, okay, the writing's on the wall. We just can't pull off Quidditch. And I don't think anybody in this world wanted this game to include a bad version of Quidditch.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think that would have made anybody happy. So that's how the decision came to be. But yeah, there wasn't like a mission statement like, make a Harry Potter game, do not include Quidditch. That was never a discussion.
I do like that the reasoning you can find out more about as you explore.
Yeah, there's some little notes and stuff.
I really liked those little tidbits where you like find a note from Phineas Nigelus to the nurse in the hospital wing, and then it's half of it's like redacted. And finding things around to kind of be like, ooh, there's like something going on here.
What happened?
Well,
people killed?
It's like it's like a mini mystery within the story. So I did like those touches to just kind of instead of just a blanket statement of like, yeah, Quidditch is canceled this year, and then it's never mentioned again. I did like that it kind of can come back if you're exploring enough.
Good.
Just to get little moments of hey, maybe there's something else kind of going on with this.
Who knows? Who knows what the future holds? But I know a Quidditch game just came out. I haven't had a chance to play it yet, so I don't know how it's doing. But it was just too big for the game.
Yeah, fair enough. That would be a hard thing to combine together. I mean,
it's weird to me because like nobody asks. Well, maybe some people do. Nobody says to like for the books like, hey, you know what? That was a stupid book because there wasn't Quidditch in it. Like, but people were killing each other. Like, there's things that are a little more important than Quidditch right now.
Don't let Oliver Wood hear you say that.
Adrian, it also, like, it fits into that writing thing that you talk about in terms of having things that fit so seamlessly and yet is new information. Phineas Nigelus Black canceling Quidditch. Absolutely. When that happened, I went, oh, of course. One of the least popular headmasters ever. That's like Sirius's quote. Like, of course he canceled Quidditch.
Right.
That was a freebie that we got when we chose it.
More like, of course he's the least popular headmaster if he canceled Quidditch.
Yep.
It goes both ways.
We just kind of won the lottery. Those choices kind of just came together. Like, oh, that makes sense. So, yeah.
So Sierra mentioned notes, Phineas Nigelus says, I want to talk about some really, really dark, really tragic notes. So there's a side quest that I completed recently, Plight of the House Elf.
Oh, yeah.
And oh my God.
My heart.
Like, first of all, like, who is supposed to be Tobbs' master? And frankly, why are they not the big bad of this story? Because that is the most effed up thing I've ever seen.
It was probably a Malfoy. I'm sure. Like, that's not an official answer. I'm just based on the evidence I have. The thing is, the pureblood families, that's actually how they treated house elves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not very palatable for us to hear about, but it's actually part of the lore. And so one of the writers had a really interesting idea to do something like that. And it's dark, but it's appropriate. It's
absolutely.
It's on property. So who it was, I have no idea, but I think it put a glimpse in for a part of the lore that maybe some people aren't necessarily as familiar with. And I thought that was pretty clever.
Well, I want him as the villain in Hogwarts Legacy 2 because Tobbs needs to be avenged. I have feelings.
I don't feel like there's going to be Avengers for Tobbs until Hermione invents Spew.
Yes, excellent. Well said.
Year 5. Yeah.
So in terms of all the different quest lines of character arcs, etc., do you have one that like you felt like was the most difficult to create or the most difficult to watch come to an end? You could answer in either direction.
I think Fig was the hardest because there was just so much he carried a lot of story. Yeah. And he bobbed and weaved through your entire life. You know, everything you did was somehow affected by your relationship with Fig. And I didn't necessarily have my hands on every detail and nuance, you know, especially towards the end. But I think he was the toughest one to land. I miss him. He's a great character. But every time a good character dies, you know, it's a tough loss. But you can make it feel significant. You can make it feel relevant and important to the journey that the character takes. And you know, if you look at the books, when Dumbledore dies, that's when Harry, you know, he doesn't have a safety net anymore, and that's when he realizes like he's got to do some big things because it's part of the hero's journey. Your mentor is gone, and you actually have to do the last part of that journey on your own. Yeah, and I think that was an essential part of Harry's journey, and I suspect as much for. Protagonist student. I wish he had a better name than that, but you know, I feel like it felt relevant. It felt like it had stakes attached to it, and it meant something. You know, so I'm sorry. I just this is not a spoiler. This is just my made up version of the end of the game. You can cut this part if you need to. I just realized I just spoiled something.
No, it's fine.
It's been out for a while, you guys.
Yeah.
So go play it. But Fig was hard, you know.
I know I am in particular sobbed.
Yeah. It was hard. It was emotional.
I did. I sat there and I was just crying. And then
have watched reaction videos of people doing that same thing with Sebastian's storyline.
Yeah. Oh man, absolutely.
Because it's pretty devastating at the end too.
Oh yeah, I mean, basically me going through like kind of like the last, I don't know, eighth of it. I'm not sure exactly where I fit all those storylines in, but kind of that last chunk, there's just so many like emotional points.
Yeah.
And I'm just constantly crying and everything. And then I had finished the game before my husband, so I was sitting and watching him play. And he's getting to all these, and he's just like stoically watching the ending scene. And I'm like, are you not affected by this at all? And I'm sitting there crying again.
I think, for me, this game was already a big success as soon as I started playing it, walking around, the story, everything. But it reached an upper echelon of like favorite video games ever because there's so many great emotional moments at the end of this game. Whether you're doing Poppy's storyline, which really affected both me and my wife, who's a biologist, a marine biologist. The storyline with Fig, the decisions you have to make around Sebastian, and the tragic storyline that he has. There's just so many great emotional triumphs there, whether they're positive or not.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. It's awesome.
Irvin, I'm sure you have questions about spiders. What question would you like to ask?
Why?
So there's actually a good game design reason for it. If they didn't have spiders, there wouldn't be an easy thing for you to button mash and kill. And you'd have to kill people or goblins, and neither of those is palatable. Like, just go around murdering stuff as much as you want, but when you're making a video game, you have to give the player reasons to mash those buttons. And if they don't have those reasons, then it gets really boring really quickly. And in a lot of RPG games, you have things like zombies or barrel wights or any number of things. But we needed some low level like monster,
Right.
that you could practice dueling on. And spiders fit in the lore ish. I mean, we had some arguments about but there's not acromantulas right now because Hagrid's the first one that brought it, and we had to kind of skirt around that one a little bit. I'm still iffy about that. But spiders created this opportunity where I don't think it was really as unpalatable for people to just free shoot an insect as it was arachnids. Sorry, please, nobody come at me. But I don't think that was as unpalatable as shooting dark wizards and goblins and things like that were sentient beings, So you just have to do stuff like that in a video game.
Yeah.
Or otherwise it just gets really dull. So there's a lot of them, I agree. They scare the crap out of me, and I don't like the sounds they make. And
No.
Especially that one journey through the cave that's kind of early on in the Hogwarts. It was so well done. I was scared for my entire existence. All beings. I had, spider phobia everywhere there was a spider in my house. I was sure of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, your skin starts itching because your spiders are crawling all over you.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's effective work, I guess.
Yes,
but
very.
I was always like, please do not let me run into anything the size of Shelob.
God.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I straight up just stopped playing for months and waited for a friend to come over and do the spider missions because I was like, nope,
So
no
you
way.
stopped playing and asked a friend to come kill the spiders in your house, basically?
Yes, 100% yes.
That's amazing. Yeah, and I started playing another one, and I turned on arachnophobia mode just to see what it was like.
Yeah.
There's still too much like spiders.
There's still too much legs.
Yeah.
There's too many legs.
That arachnophobia mode happened because there was a couple of people at the studio that were like literally terrified
Yeah.
of that, and we realized that's probably not going to be the only people on Earth that feel that way.
Yeah.
Hi.
That's funny. Did you it's interesting because I had only ever seen arachnophobia for one other game, and it come out the same year. It was Jedi Survivor. Is that something that had been in the works that existed previously and I just didn't notice it? Or has that been a recent development in the video game world?
I think it's a more recent development. Yeah. I think it's just happenstance that those both happened when they did. But
okay.
But it's a more recent, our world learn stuff about society over time.
Yeah.
And one of the things we're learning now is that spiders cause people bad PTSD sometimes.
Yeah.
And are we going to be jerks and be like, tough, deal with it? Or are we going to try to like support that a little bit? And we chose to try to support it a little bit.
Thank you. I very much enjoy the arachnophobia modes.
It's a big improvement.
I'm sure the guys will be glad to hear.
Obviously, other than the spiders, because, again, there is a right answer. What do you think is the scariest thing in the game other than that? Because the corridor with the devil's snare, like, creeped me the hell out the first time I went down it.
Yeah. I think Fighting in Fury was the thing for me, honestly. Yeah. I didn't like that. It was so necessary for that story moment because to raise in fury, you have to do some really dark magic,
right?
And it was appropriate for that moment in the game, and like they just come at you like these mindless zombies, and why did I say mindless? I don't know of any zombies that are mindful, but
Warm Bodies.
Yeah, I was about to say Warm Bodies.
That's true. That's a good movie, by the way.
It is a good movie.
But that for me was like the height of terrifying. I actually bought a VR set after working on Hogwarts, and because I was really interested in that as a way to do games.
Yeah.
And I previewed the Walking Dead game. And like 30 seconds into it, zombies started jumping into my sight. Suddenly I'm like, nope, I'm out. I stopped just short of burning my VR headset. It's like, no. That's never going to be downloaded on this set. That was probably the scariest thing for me.
Yeah, that just you talking about the Walking Dead and the zombies jumping at you reminded me of I was not a gamer for a long time. And one of the very first games that my like boyfriend in high school was like, you have to play this, was Left 4 Dead 2. And he sat me down and he's like, you will play this game for 10 minutes. And I'm just sitting there like terrified the entire time. And he also knew that I didn't like clowns. And there's a level with clown zombies. And I was like, I hate you so much. This is the worst experience of my life.
Who'd do that to somebody?
Him, apparently. I don't know. We were young. Whatever.
It's no excuse.
No. But in the game, so my personal like scariest part of the game is the haunted Hogsmeade shop.
Yeah. That's pretty trippy, isn't it?
Terrifying. I was like, I had to turn the lights. Like, I usually play with pretty dim lighting, and I had to turn the lights on. and I kept expecting like things to be jumping out. What was like the inspiration for that? Because it's a little different than a lot of the other sections of the game.
And also, why was the inspiration Doctor Who?
For legal purposes, it wasn't. No. So I would say one thing about the amazing, talented writer that worked on that mission. You know, it was a Sony exclusive, and so we wanted to give them something that felt exclusive. Like, there's nothing else like this in the game. And the idea that you could like get a house elf out of it was pretty cool. But she wrote, I think, more lines to be spoken in that mission set than anything else in the entire game. Like, there were so many freaking lines from Peeves taunting you and things like that. And I feel like, you know, there was a point, I don't remember exactly when it happened, but there was a point where somebody said, you know what, I would really like it if this could feel like it's got like a creepy funhouse vibe to it, because it's just Peeves taunting you, and we can use magic to our advantage. And the producer that was working on that sequence sweat bullets getting it right, and the writer and the artisans that worked on that sequence just worked so hard to get it right. But it's just, yeah, it's really creepy. and I don't know how to explain it other than I remember somebody in a meeting saying, like, wouldn't it be cool if this is just like a really like a Wizarding World version of like a fun house, like a really creepy fun house. So it's kind of what happened. And that poltergeist, what was his name?
Oh yeah,
Oh,
There was a time that I
what
could
is his name?
remember all of the characters' names, but that time has passed.
I just remember him being very like poshy, and he
Yeah.
had the wig and the
He's obnoxious,
yes,
like
he's
every
very
poltergeist
obnoxious.
should be.
Very, very true. Very true.
I remember it started with like there was a story nugget of, you know, it's a story mission where you're going to get a house elf, but you have to help him figure out what's going on. And then we developed the plot with the house where people would buy the shop, and then they get scared away, and then they just keep reselling the shop over and over again. And that was a charming idea, and it had the feel of like a Harry Potter style B story where they were solving a smaller mystery that had a little more charm and humor to it than the bigger mystery. And it just kind of developed that way until they're like, okay, well, I think there was a point where we realized how much gameplay we needed to have for the Sony exclusive. And so that expanded that in-house part exponentially. But yeah.
His name is Fastidio.
yeah.
That's it. Yep. I was just about to say that.
I had to literally look it up.
Yeah. But I love Penny though.
Yeah. Penny,
Yeah.
Penny's cool.
She's just so cute.
Yep. And it's nice to have some good house elf representation in the game, honestly.
Yeah.
True.
That's part of what you're expecting when you're in Harry's world.
For sure. Well, Adrian, we're on to our last two questions here.
Okay.
You've been an
I hope I
absolute
haven't talked
pleasure
you
to
ear
have.
off too much.
No, not at all. I could do this all night. I could go until 4 a.m. It's been an absolute pleasure. Last two questions. We'll start with this one. Was there anything that you personally wished had made it into the game that didn't, or conversely, something that you were glad that did not make it in?
One thing that I wish had made it into the game was we had Natty's Natty 09's storyline that used to include a really cool mission set, which was teaching you how to become an animagus. You did all the steps.
Oh my gosh!
And I wish we would have had the bandwidth to pull that off, because that would have been so wonderful. You know, the biggest letdown of that, the reason that it ultimately got canceled, is because we were either going to have to force the player to be a specific animal of our choosing, or we would blow our budget giving them options. And,
Right.
and it just was not in the cards. We so many people that are incredibly talented and lovely people tried so hard to baby that into being, and it just didn't work out. But man, I really wish that would have been able to happen. That's the reason that Natty is an animagus, actually, because she's going to lead you on this journey to become one.
Oh,
I assume same reasoning why we don't have Patronuses, because you gotta animate 1 million animals.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah. Same problem. Because we could say like, oh no, your Patronus is a cat, but then how many people are going to be happy with that? Like,
Right.
No,
Patronus is a
absolutely
very
not.
individual thing for every person, and so
right.
just like getting sorted into a house, like I don't think, and so Dementors and Patronuses didn't make the cut for that reason.
And Lethifolds.
Oh gosh.
Lethifolds.
We won't even get started on how creepy those are.
The most terrifying creature in Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. The cloaks that eat you.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
Yeah.
And then our last question here. The future of the series. To the best of your knowledge, how likely is it that we will be getting a Hogwarts Legacy 2?
I have no official information on that whatsoever, but you know, there's a pretty popular game, and I don't know that Warner Brothers would be disinterested in continuing the franchise. But literally, this is me as a fan speaking, and not as anybody with any official capacity. Is it likely? Sure.
Nice.
Like anything in the future isn't written yet, and so who knows? Who knows what the future holds? I have no idea. But if I knew, I wouldn't tell you, because I would be hurting. I would be hurting people that I care about a great deal.
Of course. So aggregators get it right.
It's like $1.5 billion worth of likely.
I mean,
so
it did okay.
made a few bucks.
I mean, if they made a Spider-Man movie, do you think they'd make a second Spider-Man movie? Maybe. Very popular.
I think they would. Thrice.
3 different Spider-Man 2s.
So we're announcing here Hogwarts Legacy universe. Because it's going to be multi-universal Harry Potter characters.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible.
I didn't want to imagine that. That would be just such a nightmare for the writing team. But, who knows? I'm excited. If they do one, I'd be super excited to play it and cheerlead my team members as loudly as I could.
Awesome. And then you got any last thoughts before we end the main section of our podcast, dear Adrian?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. I mean, it's probably the first time I could have done this because I don't work for the company anymore. I don't think I've said anything that would hurt anybody that I worked with or anything like that. But the big message I want to say is, I left the company for my own reasons in my life. It was just time to move on. And it was possibly the hardest decision I've ever had to make because the Wizarding World is a really cool thing to work on. But working on that with my cherished friends was that you can't put a price on that. It was amazing. There are so many talented, wonderful, brilliant minds that make these products for you that work so hard and they sweat blood to make this happen so that you can play these amazing games. And I give all credit to them on everything. I get to say that I was involved in a small way on a really huge juggernaut of a project, and nobody would want to talk to me about anything if it weren't for the amazing skills of those exceptional human beings. So anyway, thank you so much for having me on, and I really appreciate it. And I hope we can all continue to just love this franchise with all it's worth.
Yes, definitely. And thank you so much for being here with us. It's been truly a pleasure. This has been pretty amazing to be able to discuss this with you and get some extra knowledge and learn more just about the general process of everything. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any plug that you want to make for anything?
Where to follow you?
Passion projects or where to follow you or anything like that?
Where to follow me? I'm Toon Baboon on Instagram. That's probably the best place to follow me. Also on TikTok. I do a lot of drawing. I'm actually also a comic book artist, so I do a lot of that kind of stuff as well. And my next 2 convention appearances, I'll be at FanX Salt Lake, September 26th. And I will be at MouseCon. That's a Disney-themed event. On October 19th.
Where is MouseCon? I want to go to MouseCon.
Oh, it's in Salt Lake.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'll also be at Rocky Mountain Con on November 9th. And that's in Aurora, Colorado. If you follow my Instagram, you can find my appearances pretty easy.
What's the Instagram handle again?
Toon Baboon.
As in Toon? Or Tune?
Yes.
Oh, Toon.
Toon.
Awesome. Well, Adrian, like we kept saying, it's been an absolute pleasure. We'd love to have you back whenever you want. We can even discuss not Hogwarts Legacy. You can come on and look at a chapter with us or whatever it is and just geek out over Harry Potter. But we've absolutely adored having you on the podcast. And a really big thank you for coming on and agreeing to enter the 3 broomsticks and have a drink with us.
Of course, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Irvin.
Yeah?
What is playing on the pub's jukebox today?
Well, obviously the Hogwarts Legacy soundtrack, which, I've been hearing for hours and hours and hours and hours, playing to prep for the episode. And, honestly, it is so soothing. But because I don't have the audio file, today at the pub's jukebox, we are listening to a song by the Gringotts Girls called Down in the Ground Where the Goblins Go. It is a very quick ditty. It's fantastic in live performance because they get, the whole audience going, down in the ground, we go. It's a whole bit. But, for a game where it's all about the nefarious things goblins get up to, or down to, as the case may be, let's do a song about the goblins going down.
Down in the ground where the goblins go. Down in the ground where the goblins go. Down in the ground where the goblins go. Down in the ground we go. Down in the ground. If you need fun, go out and you'll do yet fall. Back and hold the one to and never ever be fun. So to access your treasure, you must do all of pleasure. Test your life, be off this sort. For an esky through fish and short.
A huge thanks again to Sam Oman, who bought us this round of drinks at the Three Broomsticks. Thanks again, Sam. It was really, really helpful. And what a great conversation you bought for, huh? Adrian really gave it all during that sipping time. If you'd like to buy us the next round, head on over to patreon.com/3broomsticks with the number 3 to sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/3broomsticks with the numeral 3. You can also help by rating and reviewing us. And if you like our show, don't forget to tell your friends. Word of mouth helps us hugely, and we always love to see these. And don't forget, Giving Tuesday is coming up in November. Please consider our little podcast. If you contribute or give to us by one of our higher Patreon contents, you'll have a lot of access to a lot of great stuff. We'd love to see you there.
Yeah, right, because we've been talking about Hogwarts Legacy on Patreon, like, from the word go.
Yeah.
But yeah, also, if you want to chat Hogwarts Legacy with us, you can also find us all over social media on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on TikTok.
Oh, we're back.
Sure, we're on TikTok, too. Love it. All those handles and our email address you can find in the episode description or on the website. You guys know the drill by now. Go to our website. It's 3broomstickspod.com. That's with the 3 spelled out. There you will get links to whatever the hell we talked about, links to essays, links to music. You can submit a topic. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Let us know if you want to talk more about Hogwarts Legacy. Do we need to do a Sebastian Sallow episode? Because,
yes.
Listen, I could be convinced.
Yes.
Yes, okay, good. Glad we had this talk.
Less.
No, say more. Say like 2.5 hours more about Sebastian Sallow. But yeah, listeners, let us know your thoughts over there.
And the next time that we meet at the Three Broomsticks, we will be discussing Prisoner of Azkaban, Chapter 20, Dementor's Kiss.
Woo! Great chapter.
Ooh.
Woohoo! Thank you so much for joining us. I've been Sierra.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Irvin. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time in the Three Broomsticks. Cheers!
Give me big old buckets of butterbeer. Give me big old barrels of butterbeer. Give me the drink I love so dear. And another round for my friend right here of the sweet old butterbeer.
This episode of The Three Broomsticks was edited by Patrick Musilek. The theme song was written and performed by the Faithful Sidekicks. Make sure to check them out at thefaithfulsidekicks.com.
Okay, who is Three Broomsticks HR? Because I will be having words with them.
I think that's you.
Oh my god, what is this? My office where HR is also one of the lead partners? No, I don't think that's a good system.
Oh my gosh. Well, in my office, the HR manager is married to the owner.
Yeah,
it's a great system. Love that.
I mean, they're also my parents.
Oh, even worse.
That's so funny. Okay.
HR frequently goes, "You want to take a long lunch? Come to lunch with me."
Yeah.
And I go, "I have to work for a living." And she's like, "It's fine."